Welcome to Uprise Stories. This series, we're interviewing the remarkable people who are building unconventional careers doing things that make them feel alive. We'll dig into their real-life stories, the ups and downs, challenges, and how they really took those first steps into the unknown. Each episode, we'll be giving you some practical advice and real-life learning for anybody who's thinking there's got to be more to life than this on how to build a more remarkable career from the ground up. First up, we talk to Robin, who's left his successful corporate career and a life that seemed so perfect on paper, but deep down felt unfulfilling. He's now launching his own business, Chumble, which provides programs designed to create happier lives through habit building, so that Robin can pursue his personal mission to create 1 billion happier lives through habits. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, Robin, welcome to the show, our new show, Uprise Stories. We're here with Robin and our head of product at Uprise Academy as well, Stephen. So welcome, guys.
Excellent so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. So, Robin, I want to get started by kind of digging into your story and I guess where you've been and where you are now. But you obviously made a decision a little while ago to kind of change your life and career in quite like a drastic way. And so I want to first kind of start by understanding what you were doing sort of a few months ago, how you were feeling, and what kind of has led you to what led you to make the decision in the first place to make this really big change.
Yeah, so excellent question. I think for me it all started about a year ago actually. I was living in Dubai at the time. I had a very good job, I had a very comfortable life, but I felt there was something missing. And I've kind of asked myself, what positive impact am I making in the world? And that really led me to evaluate everything that I was doing. I was very much on track for an amazing career. At the time was responsible for the customer experience department at a large FMCG and food service distributor, but it didn't make me happy. And I felt like it was worth leaving behind this good life for a potentially amazing one. So I quit and I traveled a bit and then I started Chumble. So yeah.
How did you, because I mean it's quite like a drastic thing to do, to be like, right, sort it, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go and do something else, especially when you're obviously already successful, you're kind of ticking all the boxes that you were supposed to tick in life. So like, what was there, like a moment or like a decision, or like how did you eventually make that decision to just like take the leap? Because I think that's the kind of like first step that so many people are like afraid to make.
Yeah, very good question. I think for me what really helped was quantifying my perspective and really looking into, okay, so what would a happy, fulfilling life look like for me? And then, although maybe I was ticking society's boxes in terms of what a happy life, successful life should look like, if it wasn't in line with what I wanted it to look like, then I couldn't really sell the idea to myself that if this wasn't what would make me happy, that I would stick in there. So just kind of being very honest to myself and really looking deep within myself, to say a very dreamy way. And yeah, that kind of pulled the trigger for me.
Nice. And from like a practical perspective as well, was it kind of something that you planned for a little while? Because I mean, I think, most people are like, okay, well, I need my job to, pay my way in the world, and stuff like that. So did you, I guess from a practical perspective as well, like how did you prepare to do that?
Yeah, so from a practical perspective, I prepared for almost 6 months, actually, in terms of saving, but also in terms of a few courses that I still wanted to do. At the time, I was studying at Harvard, disruptive strategy, to kind of not only give me the skills, but also really the confidence to kind of make the leap. Because it is quite scary, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. So yeah, I really took the time to prepare myself for it so that, yeah, I was ready both physically as well as mentally.
Yeah, I think that's something so fascinating you're touching on there as well, because I feel like with all these boxes that are normally ticked, there seems to be this trade-off that people have to make between meaning and happiness versus salary that comes with lifestyle, with identity, appreciation, and also like what I guess the sort of almost like ego feeding you get from your environment. Like, do you feel like now that you've switched, I mean, my guess is that you had to, take a bit of a lower salary because you started to do something for yourself, but ideally, hopefully, this has been replaced by a bit of meaning or happiness in your job. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think from a very young age, we're taught that this idea of success is indeed, as you say, like ticking all of these boxes and having all of that money and a high position and all of that, really feeding the ego. And it was for me when I had all of that I realized that it wasn't making me happy. It wasn't leading to a life that I wanted to live. So for me, even though now in terms of, as I'm very early on in this new venture, as I don't have the same financial means, although I don't have the same financial means, the purpose that I get from having my own company and really my values being so closely aligned with this business, with Chumble and everything that it stands for, it brings me so much joy and fulfillment that there is no way that I would, I would go back to a corporate career and have all of that money simply for the purpose of being rich.
Yeah, it's really that difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? Like doing things for the things that you believe in versus appreciation from the outside world, I guess.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool.
Nice. Yeah, I do think like there's definitely a shift in people's perspective, especially like nowadays, like we've all been brought up, I think generationally as well, to kind of think that you have to have all those boxes ticked. And I think a lot, like more and more people, which is awesome, I think more and more people are realizing that actually what truly makes you happy isn't necessarily having the latest, like whatever, it's doing things that actually mean something to you. So you can wake up in the morning and be like, wow, I'm doing, like, this is awesome. I'm doing something that I actually care about, rather than just like sat at a laptop all day, just plugging in numbers or whatever, you're doing, and not actually connecting with it,
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so I guess the next step after deciding to take that leap is then you've got to figure out what on earth you want to do instead, right? Which is the other thing that I think people really struggle with, because it's like, well, if I'm not doing this thing that I've worked for however many years to do, what on earth am I going to do instead? So can you talk me through how you kind of went through that process of figuring out what you did actually want to work on?
Yeah. So for me, it was actually quite a long process. As I mentioned, about a year back, I resigned, and I am a super ambitious person in a lot of different areas as well. So in this was the same. So I wanted to find something that was very closely aligned with my own values. I wanted to find something that I was good at, that I could really make an impact. And thirdly, something that was in demand. So something where I could really trigger some positive change in the world. And my personal opinion is that I really wanted to take enough time for me to kind of explore different areas, different things before I would make the decision. I didn't want to rush into things. And in the end, Chumble is basically based on using habits to create a happier life. And in essence, it is what I have been doing for myself in the past 10 years. So in my free time, I already spend all of this time like reading books, watching videos, speaking to people about how habits work and how you can use them to add value to your life. And I figured that as I still get so much happiness, joy, and purpose from these habits, it would almost be selfish to kind of keep that to myself. So yeah, I figured I would go with that, and yeah, really best decision ever. I'm super happy what I'm doing, but also the response from people is just amazing.
Nice. And is there anything that kind of surprised you about where you decided, like that process of deciding where you wanted to go? Was there anything, did you kind of like surprise yourself in any way with like what you came up with?
Yeah, well, so actually, I kind of saw like my like these habits and the knowledge that I possess in this field as more of a hobby. Like it's something that I do for myself, and that's kind of it. I never really looked at it as something that I can help people with. So in essence, that has been the biggest surprise of all. That in the end, I turned this hobby into my profession.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well, because I imagine when people are thinking about changing career or making a major career change, they probably think, oh, I only have the skills to do the job that I have now. And actually, what you've done is kind of look at maybe the kind of bigger picture, but it's something that actually is already there and is already part of your life. It's just not in the kind of typical like job skills way of kind of thinking of it.
And I think also that is something that like we often underestimate the skills and knowledge that we already possess, because like for us it's very normal that we know this, that we can do this, but to others that might not be the case, and you can potentially add amazing value to someone's life. And that is exactly what happened for me, where it wasn't even like it wasn't even one of the options that I had in my head for starting a business, when realistically I have all of this knowledge acquired over these years, this experience, and yeah, it offered an amazing opportunity for me.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I think it really resonates as well with like, so one of the things we see a lot as well when people go through starting their own business is like the importance of taking care of yourself and developing the right habits with that. One of the things, well, I tend to talk about, or like as Uprise as well, is becoming like this MVP, this minimum viable person, like developing the right habits to take care of your physical and mental health. And I think also, I mean, I assume you're familiar with James Clear from Atomic Habits.
Yes.
And what you're saying overlaps a lot with what he's talking about when developing habits. It's like you need to create almost these identity statements and then slowly become that person. I feel like in your story, that's almost what you did. Like you said to yourself, like, this is the person I am. Now, how do I turn that into a product and prove to myself that I can be that person? Which I think is really interesting.
Thanks.
So what kind of obviously, I mean, like starting up your own project, idea, or business is always like, it's not always good, right? Like there's always going to be challenges and stuff. So like what have been the kind of biggest challenges that you faced in terms of actually going and starting your own sort of idea and business?
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest challenge so far is really that um, obviously there is a lot of different things that are coming your way when you start up a business. It's very overwhelming, and I'm a type of person that wants to do everything well. So when all of these things come towards you, it is impossible to focus on everything at the same time. So I really had to decide to postpone things that were also important, but still did not make it to my, let's say, top three priority list. And for me personally, it was very, very hard to kind of let go of that. But it's super important because, yeah, there's an interesting book called Essentialism. And it's basically about if you focus on one thing very, very well, you actually like the penetration of that one task is much, much deeper, so you actually get it done well. Whereas if you're spread too thin over I don't know how many tasks, then you're going to fail at every single one of them, and you're not going to achieve anything. So that's really what I try to keep in the back of my mind. But still, it was quite a tough one for me.
Did you get any kind of like, because as well, I mean, if you're starting your own business, you know, you don't have like a marketing department or a finance department or like, you know, everyone else. You've got to literally do all of it yourself. And I think
Yeah.
something that sometimes, you know, people struggle with is maybe not having the self-confidence to give things a go. You know, people don't want to fail at stuff. You kind of get that fear of failure, or kind of imposter syndrome, kind of, oh, don't feel like I'm good enough to do this. Like, is that something that you ever like struggled with at all?
Yeah, so for me, with regards to the first one, obviously there are a lot of things that I'm not an expert in. Luckily, I've got amazing people around me that are experts in different fields, and I really feel really humbled by all the support that I received from like so many friends, but also people that I hardly know. The other day, I reached out to a happiness expert. Has been in happiness research for over 60 years, and he just chatted for a while, and I discussed like how the program is set up and how that can improve. So for me, the first one is really about creating people around me that are actually experts and that can help you out. And in terms of the imposter syndrome, like we spoke about it a bit earlier as well, is that we as humans consistently underestimate the importance of like our knowledge and our experience that we have so far. So whenever thoughts like that come up, I just remind myself that it's okay to have these feelings, and but it's not a realistic train of thought. So it's not supported by anything, and that really helps for me to kind of like shrug it off and to continue what I'm doing with the confidence that I need.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like I read this piece the other day about the inner critic, right? And they were saying that the inner critic basically fundamentally overestimates the danger out there and underestimates our capability to deal with it in you know, in an effort to keep us safe. So yeah, I think what you're saying there is spot on, where you like need to realize where is this coming from and how is it trying to protect us. One question I had actually about something you said earlier, because I think in the beginning, because you're still at zero, there's a million tasks you feel like you need to do: branding, partnership, website, X, Y, Z. Like, how did you decide which steps you wanted to take first? Because one of the things I think is always super important is to like start with basically the low-hanging fruit, because they will get you the furthest, the quickest. And also one of the things I think sometimes can be super helpful is to run little experiments to see like, is this actually low-hanging fruit? And will it actually get me where I want to get to? Because it's often based on assumptions. Like how did you go through that basically prioritization of what is actually important right now?
Yeah, so for me, it's a combination of two things that you mentioned there. For me, initially, I really put the focus on experimentation. So as you said, really testing those assumptions that I had with regards to how habits can help people create happier lives.
Yeah.
And then to set specific tests. So in one test, we were interviewing people, actually asking what success factors were with regards to habit formation, and what maybe some aspects were that people had in common that were unsuccessful in forming a habit. And then the second part to that is, yes, the experimentation is a priority, but for myself, it's also very important to look into deadlines that may be coming up in the next few months or so. So for example, I'm running my first program next month.
Yeah.
And for that, I have to invest a lot of time in creating the actual program. So if I keep those experiments at the top of my priority list all the time, I'm not actually going to get to creating a program, and I'm not going to be able to run the program. So for me, it's really trying to keep a healthy balance of what things do I want to test right now, and what time do I need to invest to actually make sure that I hit these important deadlines in the near future.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and the importance of deadlines itself, right? Just having something to work towards. It's a form of accountability. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. And so, in terms of kind of what you've like achieved so far, so it sounds like you're in a pretty exciting place because you're going to be running your first program next month, which is pretty cool considering you only started this very recently. What was there like a moment where you kind of had your first, like, what was your first kind of big win, or like first success when you were just like, yes, this is what I want to do, and like this was the best decision?
Yeah, so actually I've kind of had that feeling throughout. I love working on Chumble. I love the theory of it. I love reaching out to people, interviewing people, understanding people's different experiences, their challenges and their success factors. But in terms of a win, I was super excited to get my first person on the waiting list for the program. So that was a big win. Thank you so much. And yeah, I suppose like as I'm so ambitious and I'm always focusing on the future, I really try to structure my accomplishments in a way, and like my celebrations in a way in which I celebrate like the first follower on my socials, the first person to sign up to the newsletter, and these kind of things. And so far I've gotten to countless positive reactions from interviews, surveys, just speaking to people. I've got 85 subscribers so far, and I've got 10 people signed up to our first program. So it's very exciting stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what about, I mean, you seem like the smiliest, happiest, most high energy, lovely person ever. But I'm sure it's not all been smiles and happiness. Like, what, have you ever had any like low moments when you're like, what on earth am I doing? Why have I taken this path? Or like moments where you've just maybe like doubted yourself, or like, you know, and if you did, like, what do you do to kind of bring yourself back up?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. It's a question I get more often actually, because I am super energetic, I am super happy, but of course there's always a different side to the story as well. Have to admit, haven't had any low lows, so it's been pretty positive throughout. But there are obviously moments where you find aspects of the business that you don't like doing as much. Like, for example, I really enjoy the academic side of things. I'm a bit of a geek. I really love digging into the research, understanding people behavior, how I can help people. And then the business aspect of it, through my experience, I became very good at it. But I don't really like that hard-on sales where I kind of push people to close and stuff like that. Especially in the beginning, it's also part of it. Like you need to put yourself out there and show yourself to the world. And I think I understand the psychology behind it as well. So I know it's necessary to kind of give people that bit of a nudge. But yeah, I don't enjoy it as much. At the same time, like the way I get through that is it's an amazing observation for me to like already be aware of the things that I enjoy more and maybe less. And then in the future, that offers an amazing opportunity for me to also work with people that do enjoy that side of things. And so that we can work together with the differences in our strengths and actually make our team as a whole even more successful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So for you as sort of the habit master, like let's say people start out something for themselves and they're really, really early stage, right? Is there a habit you think that basically you would advise to anyone? A habit where you feel like even when you're down or you have to do that task you don't like, a habit that really helps with that?
Yeah, so I think for me, I would say planning and evaluating that. So what I always do is in the evening, I evaluate my day. What were some positive emotions that I experienced? In what situation was that? What were some negative emotions that I experienced? And I also look at the goals for that day. So I divide my time up into blocks, and then I set specific goals for the different blocks. And I create those goals in the evening, so that I kind of get it all out of my head, so I can sleep peacefully, and then I can start the next morning and have a productive day. And it allows me to also be aware of situations in which I am productive and situations in which maybe my predictions in terms of what I could or could not do were maybe not so accurate.
Yeah. So really like time management and reflection time, I think you mentioned, as a form of habit that can help you keep going.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well, especially thinking about like things that went well during the day and just like taking notes and like, oh, okay. It's always just nice to end on a positive note.
Yeah, because I think also, like, for example, if you had an amazing morning, but then in the afternoon you get some bad news or something, since our brains are wired to actually focus more on like negative events, if we don't write everything down, we would evaluate the day as itself as quite negative. But then if you actually evaluate it on paper and look into specific things that went well that maybe did not go so well, you understand the importance of these positive events better. And also you have a more realistic view on this negative event. Because as you write it down, it actually appears much better than it does only in your head, where you're constantly making yourself crazy, like, how bad is this, and how bad do I feel? But if it's on paper, it's more objective. You see it in a more realistic way.
Yeah, definitely. And like, what about as well on the subject of habits? Like we kind of touched on earlier, obviously when you're kind of launching your own idea, there's so many different things for you to do and it can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like what do you do to manage your like energy? And because it'd be so easy in a way to like, you know, work around the clock and, you know, to get everything done that you need to get done. But like, how do you find juggling those things and managing your energy?
Yeah, so actually for me, this was quite a big challenge as well, because normally I am super productive, I get everything done, and I'm that kind of person. For me, I've had to schedule downtime. So it's really about not only being very strict on like when I'm productive, but also very strict on, okay, so like now I'm not working. And I found that when I set downtime sessions up, like if I go for a walk with friends or something like that. So if I have a social commitment tied to that, I am most likely to also stick to it. Because if in the evening I told my friend I would go for a walk with her, I'm not just going to cancel like that. But then if I said that I'll go for a cycle for an hour just by myself, it's very easy for me to be like, no, like I'm going to get some extra work in, because I want to get that done. And so that has been very, very important to me. And it's also one of the things that for Chumble, we also wanted to cover. So there is, in the habit building programs, there is a journey of movement, which is very much about being productive, becoming energized, that aspect. But there's also a journey of stillness, which is more about looking into meditation, looking into journaling to get all of those thoughts out of your head so that you create more inner calm. And are after that, again, ready to like re-enter your busy life with focus, with energy, with happiness.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I like the idea of kind of like, when you talk about like habits, so many people think, okay, you need to keep yourself accountable for being productive and stuff like that. But I like the idea of having other people keeping you accountable for your downtime as well. Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, and also like I think that's personally why I like Chumble a lot. Is these journeys, because I feel like the quality of work exponentially goes up when you actually value the habits you've created in your downtime. So for example, taking care of your psychological wellness or your movement or your food, and sort of moving away from this idea of quantity of work and really move into quality of work, and how important it is to actually take breaks and like appreciate those for what they are, which is really in a weird way also working time, because they increase your quality when you are actually working. And I think what you're touching on there is actually interesting as well, which is something, I think we have to round up as well, but something that might be interesting to talk a little bit about is, and something I experienced myself well, like how do you manage work versus normal life when you're working on things that are actually important to you? Because then suddenly, if your hobby is also a bit your work, could you talk a little bit about that, how you try to keep those separate?
Yeah, so like for me, it's not necessarily about keeping it separate, because like when I meet friends or I am in my downtime, then if a conversation pops up, I'm still very happy to speak to them, and it only feels amazing for me to be able to share that. But during my working time, where I'm really like behind the computer working on things or reading books for my research or anything like that, it's really about planning it and really being strict in sticking to that as well. Because yes, as you mentioned, it is very challenging to kind of draw that line and be like, okay, like it's done now. And I still often find myself cheating, actually doing work when I'm supposed to have downtime. It's a work in progress, and it will always be. And that's also the beauty of it, to see it that way, to really have that growth mindset where every setback is an amazing opportunity for growth, for learning. So that is really how I try to approach it.
Nice. Yeah, I like that's. I think everyone always thinks that they have to like do everything perfectly straight off the bat, or have this, you know, if you're creating something of your own idea, it has to like come out all shiny and perfect. And actually like just accepting the messiness, I think, is just such a great mindset to have.
Thanks.
And so just to kind of round up, you've obviously come a really long way. Like you're launching your first program soon, which is super exciting. What advice would you give to yourself or someone who is in similar shoes to where you were a few months ago, when, you know, pre-quitting your job and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so not knowing what you're working towards is pretty scary. It's mysterious. You don't really know what's going to happen. I would really recommend for people to kind of dig into it a bit deeper. So trying to understand what exactly the possibilities are, what your situation is, like in terms of money, but also in terms of the different ideas that you have, like how let's say viable are these ideas, and So do the work in advance. And maybe more importantly, try to cut it down into smaller pieces. In the end, like if you're trying to work towards this big goal of quitting, setting up your company, it's extremely intimidating. It's super scary. But if you try to cut it down into pieces, like, yeah, I'm going to research the science of happiness and answer questions X, Y, Z, that is already much easier to actually get into and to simply tick it off. There's a lot of science behind ticking tasks off and how important that is in getting that momentum for you to achieve even bigger things. So yeah, try to understand the situation because it's scary if it's unknown, and try to break it down into bite-sized steps.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. Stephen, do you have anything to add, or shall we wrap up?
No, I think it's really good. I think what you just said there is super important, like the importance of ticking boxes. And I've read a lot about the importance of making up your bed in the morning so that you start your day with your first little success.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, perfect. Thank you very much, Robin. I can't wait to see how the first program works out. Actually, very quickly before we go, do you want to tell everyone how they can find out more about you and Chumble and everything that you're working on?
Yeah, of course. For any information, people can visit chumble.family or chumble.family on Instagram. Yeah, if you're interested in understanding more, you can schedule a free exploration call with me. So it would be amazing.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you guys have a lovely day. See you.
Bye-bye.